That's where I actually wanted to come
problem.
into, because I wanted you to talk more on that when we talk about resource control, because
Yes.
I'm quite sure that will be one of the talking points in the conference. What's your take on that?
Well,
it keeps popping up every now and then.
It keeps popping up, and it's one of the most prominent issues in our federalism. You know, we had that during the national conference, the political conference under Obasanjo, and you know the outcome. It was disastrous. A group worked out, and with this 75% requirement for decision making in substantive issues, it's going to be very difficult for any group to force through its own position. That is one. But let's face it, issue of federalism will come up. There are so many aspects of federalism practice in Nigeria that we can talk about. The structure of the federal government in relation to the states and the local government. That is, a challenge. The legislative competence, the legislative and political competence of the federal government, it's quite disproportionate. It tilts too much in favor of the federal government. And then we have issues like state police. You see the Senate saying that they are rethinking the issue of state police, because insecurity is something that requires concerted effort, not a one-directional effort. Then you talk about resource control. Is it resource control or resource management? And what resources are we talking about? Because now when you talk about resources, yeah, we are focused only on oil. There are so many other resources. What about generation of resources, like tax, like Lagos State? Lagos State generates a lot of resources through taxation.
But we're not thinking towards that.
Of course, it will be on the plate because there are representatives from Lagos State. What about resources like electricity? States that have the privilege of being the ones where those are located is resources. What about other resources?
Professor Oyewo, if we start thinking that way, I'm hoping that we'll have an easy ride, because by then, definitely almost every region and state will have a particular resource or resources that they can actually manage.
Yeah, I think if we go that way and we don't focus too much on oil, it's just that oil is the easiest of all resources. You bring an expatriate, you don't invest, he brings everything, and then you rent the land to him, he brings the oil out, and he pays you your rent. It's the easiest way to go.
But Prof, there are those who actually think, do we really need a conference to set the record straight and provide proper leadership and all these problems sorted out in this country?
Well, I think the question has become hypothetical now, because whether we need the conference or we don't need the conference is there for us to deal with.
But the thing about that is that, what about those who think, look, if they really wanted to change things, they wouldn't need this conference? Because you talked about the 1985, is it 1995?
1989 and 1995 draft
all there.
constitution, yes.
So if you wanted to amend our laws, there are examples, there are precedents.
But that's exactly what this conference is doing now. All those constitution making processes have been reduced into documentary forms for the members of the delegates to look at, to say that, look, we are not bereft of ideas. We have ideas. So let's harvest these ideas and see how best we can turn them into, part of the solution for the problems of Nigeria, part of the answers to the national questions that we have not been able to address in the way we have been going. It's a good thing you are asking, because if you look at the constitutional amendment process, yeah, we have had 3 alterations to the Constitution. 2 of them on the electoral system, and 1 on the National Industrial Court. In all these amendments, Nigerians have not been considered. We have not had a constitutional amendment to bring in the, constitutionalization of the economic, social, and cultural rights. Give us the rights, and then let the right determine how the resources are to be managed. We have decisions that says that Nigerians have the right to education. Yeah. So let's be given constitutionally that right. And let's compel every government to provide education. Let's compel every government to provide health. Let's compel every government to provide housing. Let's compel every government to provide employment.
Prof, these issues that you're raising now, compelling the government, the fact that the delegates in this conference are being paid, many are worried that at the end of the day, they are just there to fill their pockets or to get their own share of the national cake. And they might not focus on these issues. You talked about problems in the education sector, problems of leadership, problems of even remembering our history, where we're coming from and where we want to get to. Now, the people there know that they're going to be getting some money. I mean, we had in some of the media how they're arguing that they were not paid 12 million naira. So they're already arguing about
million.
They're already arguing about monies. So what's the guarantee or what's the hope that they will even have the inkling to look at the issues and deal with the issues?
I think in every group, there will always be people of ideas. And I believe that the people of ideas in the conference will rise up to the occasion. It's not everybody that will go there with an altruistic motive of doing good. There are those who were just put there to fill in the space and prevent good Nigerians from coming. But be that as it may, there are people who are going there with the idea and the vision for Nigeria. And we pray that those are the people whose voices we will hear at the end of this particular process.
Well, not forgetting that it's an election year. So who knows? Won't these politicians be preoccupied with re-election than to quickly amend and pass to the National Assembly or to state assemblies who in turn want to get re-elected? So what do? Do we really think that this will be seen through?
Well, you see, that allegation has been made even against the president, that in an election here, he wants something to engage Nigerians. So he has thrown us the bone of the national conference. But you see, the beauty of the political process is that it is not all subject to the control of just one person. Otherwise, it means that we are all just, zombies, to use Fela's language. And this bone that has been thrown can be used in a way that will benefit everybody. And that's what the hope is there in the national conference, that look at the number of people, 429, isn't it?
92.
492. Multiply it by 12. That gives you some billions. We can't have all these billions and just for purposes of people to be grandstanding on the television.
Before you go, if you were to pick just one thing for us to discuss at a conference that will snowball into fixing so many other problems we have, what would that be?
It will be good governance. It will be good governance. You see, for me as a constitutional, expert, constitutional law expert, constitutionalism as a concept, which is to limit the exercise of powers and to prevent the abuse of powers, is to an end. And that end is that governance should benefit not only the nation, but the people in that nation. And that is what is missing. Seriously, with good governance, you don't need, so much. I asked people, and somebody said, if you say good governance, what would be the yardstick for you to say we have good governance? I said, for me, it's very simple. If we can have good governance that produce things that other places where they've had good governance have, we can have electricity, we can have infrastructure. The basic responsibility of government to guarantee security is there. Seriously, other things will just fall in place. We just take off with all the potentials and all. You find out that we now have brinks, and Nigeria is in the brinks. And the person who talked about the brinks was in Nigeria over the weekend. And they said, asked him, in all this, do you still feel that Nigeria represents a nation that can be? He said his assessment is based on the potentials that Nigeria represents. The question is, will the national conference give us a vehicle for tapping into this potential of becoming the giant of not just Africa, but a world player, a nation that is respected? And I hope after that we can change our green passports to another color so that people can know that we have changed.
All right, that will be interesting. Professor Oyelowo Oyewo is the former Dean, Faculty of Law, University of Lagos. Thank you for coming on this morning.
It's a pleasure.
All right, we're back in just a moment here. Don't go away.